guys, Carol from Segovia Quilts here. Today we are starting on a new quilt top and we're going to be using this super cute pattern called Primrose, and it's by Cluck Cluck Sew. And the fabric that we're going to be using for it is actually from Quilting. So I'm sure you guys have seen them around either on Facebook or on Instagram or YouTube. They have their own fabric collection and it's going to be coming to quilt shops everywhere this month. So let me show you the pattern that we're going to be making along with the beautiful fabric collection from Quilting. Alright, so this is the pattern we're going to be making. Again, it's called Primrose and it's by Cluck Cluck Sew. I saw this, and obviously it's flowers with these cute little glass jars, and I thought this would be perfect for this particular fabric collection because it is predominantly flowers. So the size that we're going to be making, so you have two different size options for this pattern. You can do a throw size or a table runner. I'm going to be doing the throw size, and it measures about 57 inches by 66.5 inches. So let me show you the fabric. So this is the fabric we're going to be using to make our beautiful Primrose quilt tops. So now this particular collection, again, is by Quilting, and it's called Botanic Blast. And it's super fitting because if you look at some of these prints here, it's predominantly flowers. So big, beautiful flowers. We've got a couple of hummingbirds in here, and it's just very colorful. So let me show you the fabrics that are not part of the Botanic Blast collection. So these two fabrics here are going to be, this white one is going to be my background for the front of the quilt, and then this lighter purple or lavender color here is going to be my backing fabric for the back of the quilt. These two are not part of the Botanic Blast collection. And then I also have two confetti cotton color fabrics over here. These are just solid color fabrics. These are not part of the Botanic Blast collection either. The rest of them, however, are. So for this green and yellow here, these will be the centers of my flowers, and then also the little stem and the leaf for each of our little jars here. That's what these two colors here are for. And then the rest of these beautiful prints here are part of the Botanic Blast collection. So let me go ahead and open them up so you can see all of these fabrics by themselves and spread out. Okay, so I've ironed all of my fabrics, except the backing fabric because I don't need it just yet, but I've ironed all of my Botanic Blast fabrics, my confetti cotton solid color fabrics, and my background fabric. And because I like to make things unnecessarily difficult, I'm going to try something a little different with my pattern, or with this particular pattern. So I got several of the Botanic Blast prints from that collection, and my plan is, instead of using like a blue fabric for the glass jars, I'm going to use the 3 polka dot fabrics from the Botanic Blast collection to do my glass jars. So all of these glass jars here are going to be one of 3 of the polka dot prints from the collection. And then my flowers here are going to be mostly one print per flower. So the pattern for the throw size calls for 5 fat quarters or quarter yard cuts. So this is fat quarter friendly, but I am using yardage for my particular quilt top. So I got quarter yard cuts of, I believe, 12 of the different prints. And so my plan, there's 15 flowers here in the throw size, so my plan is to use mostly one print for each of my flowers. Now obviously I only have 12 prints. I've got 15 flowers in my pattern though, so a few of them will be doubled, so I will have like 2 of the same flower somewhere in the pattern a couple of times, but I'm okay with that. So that is my plan. And because some of the prints from the Botanic Blast collection are larger prints, I'm going to see if I can do some fussy cutting for some of my petals here on the flowers. And to do that, I'm going to use, I've got this set of, it's called Cute Cuts, and it's by Lori Holt of Bee in My Bonnet, and this is from Riley Blake Designs. So I'm going to see if I can use a couple of these different rulers here to fussy cut some of the larger flowers in a couple of these prints for my pattern here. You don't have to do that. Again, I feel like making it unnecessarily complicated. So I'm going to try and do this and see if it'll work out. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out, I think, 1 or 2 of my fabrics using some of my rulers here and see how it lays out. Again, because I am using yardage and because I'm using so many different prints, I'm going to make 1 or 2 flowers at a time instead of like the way the pattern goes. It provides you all the cutting instructions from like cut X number of blocks from all of your fat quarters, but I'm not going to be doing that, so it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to cut out my first flower or 2 and then I'll lay it out and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so I have put all of my flower tops together. So when I say flower tops, I mean just this section right here for our pattern. So I've not done the leaves yet or the jars yet, but I've got all of my flower tops together and I wanted to show you what they look like. So I've not pressed them with the iron yet, so I do still need to do that. But here is one of them so far. How cute is that? So this is one of the smaller prints in the collection. So these are like littler flowers compared to some of the other flowers in the different prints. So here is another one. Let me show you this one. Look at that block. How cute is that? So I've got another one laid out here. So this one, obviously predominantly purple, but I was able to fussy cut some of the flowers that have these little hummingbirds on them, and I tried to get them to face the same like orientation, if you will. So this one has 3 hummingbirds in it, and here's one of the hummingbirds here, and he's like going down into it. This one is just kind of flying around, and then here's another hummingbird over here that he's kind of going into it at like on the side. So I was able to fussy cut that one. So here's the other one that I just showed you. Again, 3 hummingbirds. I was able to get these fussy cut in there. So I think it came out pretty well. I was unsure how it was going to look, honestly, because I had the idea in my head, but actually seeing it put together now, I think it came together really, really well. So again, I do still need to press them with the iron, but I do want to give you a tip. So there are a lot of sections to this block. Let me see if I can show you the back side of one. So hopefully you can see that. So there's a lot of piecing that goes on with this particular section of the block. I like to have my seams going the direction that they need to go before I sew like a new seam over that seam, if that makes sense. But obviously, because of the number of seams on even just this section, going to the iron or even just having like the iron set up near me was it was just going to be like a bit much. So I have this pressing wheel here. So now mine is wood, but I know that you can get them in plastic too. I was using this after all of my seams. So I would like sew this block here together. I would push the seam in the direction I wanted it to go, and then I would hit it with my pressing wheel just to kind of get it to lay relatively flat before I sewed like this long seam right here. So I found this to be super duper helpful. If you have one, definitely use it, unless you don't mind having like a whole ironing station set up next to you. I highly recommend using the pressing wheel or the rolling wheel. I found it very, very helpful. So again, I do need to still hit these with the iron, so I will do that. But now I'm going to go ahead and start working on the leafy section here. So these little leaf sections here above the jars. So now if you notice, the leaves are facing either to the left or to the right. So my plan is I'm going to do half and half. So I'm going to go ahead and make those, and then I'm going to also go ahead and make the jars. Again, because I'm doing 3 different color jars, multiple different color or patterned flowers, I don't want to sew anything together until I see it laid out. So I'm going to go ahead and do the flower sections and do my jars, and then we'll go ahead and lay it out and figure out the placement. All right, so I've got the leafy sections completed. So here is one side of it, and then here is the other side of it. So one leaf will point to the left and one will point to the right. Hopefully you can kind of get the idea there. So the leaves are done. I also went ahead and did my big jars. So this is one of my big jars. Here's the red, teal color. So my big jars are done. So I'm going to go ahead and do my little jars, and then we'll press all of the seams, and then we'll go ahead and lay it out and see how it looks. All right, so I finished all of my little jars, and here is one of my little jars. So this is the little one, and this is the big one. So all of my jars are done, so now I'm going to press everything and we'll do the layout. So this quilt top is done. So I added all of these super cute little hummingbirds throughout the quilt. So I cut all of the hummingbirds out of different prints from the Botanic Blast collection. I selected 3 different colors of hummingbirds. So I've got my little teal one, blue one and pink one. Oh, actually 4 colors and purple. So I've got 4 colors of hummingbirds, and I did 2 of each color. They are facing different directions, so I have some facing the right or facing towards the left, and I have some facing towards the right. And I just kind of spread them throughout the top. I thought the quilt top was fine and cute just by itself as is, but I wanted to take a little opportunity to do some fussy cutting with some of these prints from the Botanic Blast collection, and I went with the hummingbirds. I considered cutting out some of the flowers, so a couple of the prints, like this print here, has some decent sized flowers, where I considered adding a couple of flowers to the actual jars, but I didn't know if that might take too much away from the pattern and from the prints. So I just went with the birds. So again, I've got them kind of spread throughout, and I just kind of tried to make it look natural. This is pretty much my first time doing any kind of applique work. So this is a different for me, and it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think it came out really, really well, and I'm super happy with how it came out. So I think when I do the quilting, I might go ahead and do some fussy cutting of some of the flowers and put it on the back of the quilt. We'll have to see. I don't know. We'll have to see how it looks once I get the top or the backing fabric pieced together and ready to go. But this is the quilt top so far, and I love it. What do you guys think about it? So again, this quilt pattern is called Primrose, and it is by Cluck Cluck Sew. I do have it available for purchase in my shop, and I have the link listed down below in the description, so you can check that out. And again, this is the Botanic Blast fabric collection from So Yeah Quilts, and it's by Riley Blake Designs. Overall, this top came together fairly easy. There is a decent amount of piecing, specifically for around all of the flowers. We essentially had to snowball all of our blocks, so there is a decent amount of piecing, but I think it's totally worth it for the end product. I think it came out super, super cute. So my fabric selection for this top, I went with 14 prints from the Botanic Blast collection. Now I did use yardage for this top. I used 1/4 yard of all 14 prints, but you could easily use fat quarters, so you could get a fat quarter bundle of the Botanic Blast collection, and you should be more than okay to do the same thing that I did here. And then for the centers of my flowers, for those I went with a confetti cottons. This is the beehive color. I specifically went with a more muted yellow because I didn't want it to be super duper bright. I didn't want to take away from the Botanic Blast prints, so I went with a slightly more muted yellow. And then for my stems and my leaves, it is also a confetti cotton. This is the Alpine confetti cotton color. Again, slightly more muted instead of like a super bright green. I wanted it to be a little bit muted. And then for my background fabric here, so this is the Blossom Tone on Tone White, and it is a white on white print, so it might be hard to see in the camera, but it does have essentially like little white dots throughout the entire fabric. So for my backing fabric, I have selected this beautiful print here. So now this is Sparkler Lilac Sparkle. This is from the Sparkler collection, also from Riley Blake Designs. So again, slightly more muted on the color. I didn't want to take away from the beautiful prints, and I think that'll actually work out really well if I do end up adding some fussy cutting from some of our different prints from the Botanic Blast collection. I think the muted purple lilac color will really let some of the prints be able to shine on their own, especially if I go with some of these darker purples here. And some of these, this is a little bit, not quite ombre, but it's got a little bit of a lighter purple into a darker purple. So I think that would actually look really, really good to add a couple of those fussy cut flowers to the back of the quilt. And then the last fabric that I will be using for this quilt top is going to be for my binding. So for my binding, I went with another print from the Botanic Blast fabric collection. So this one is called Hummingbird's Sangria. So for the binding, I specifically selected a very dark, very bright print from the Botanic Blast collection. I think this will really frame out our quilt nicely against the white fabric of my backing fabric. So I intentionally selected a much darker print from the collection to do my binding with, and I can't wait to put this on. I think that's going to look so good on the binding. So the last thing to do is to figure out how I'm going to quilt this beautiful top. Again, this is my first time doing any kind of applique work. Traditionally for applique, you do stitch around whatever the design is that you are appliquing onto the quilt. So because my hummingbirds have very, very narrow beaks, I'm going to refrain from actually stitching my birds onto the quilt in the traditional applique sense. I do worry that if I try to stitch it on, I will end up messing up the tiny, delicate little beaks of the birds. So I'm not going to actually be stitching them onto the quilt. I'm not concerned about them coming off because this quilt isn't going to be used in the traditional sense of like using it on a bed that somebody is actively using every day. It's going to be more so for show or decoration. So I'm not concerned about the longevity of my birds. If you do the same thing, keep that in mind where if you do fussy cut the birds, their beaks are very, very narrow. I'm talking about 1/8 of an inch wide and that's it. That's going to be very difficult to stitch on without potentially messing it up. So if you are going to do the hummingbirds, determine on if it's a good choice or not based on how much the quilt is going to be getting used and how often you're going to have to potentially launder it. So that is it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this little walkthrough tutorial of doing the Primrose Quilt pattern using the Botanic Blast fabric collection, the new collection from Sew Yeah Quilts. Again, it is by Riley Blake Designs. I do have links to the Primrose pattern in the description down below. I also have a link where you can pick up the Fat Quarter Bundle of the Botanic Blast fabric collection linked down below. If you have any questions or comments about the video or tutorial or anything like that, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. If you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel yet, please make sure you do so by hitting that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later. I did select 14 prints from the Botanic Blast fabric collection. What do you think? Do you like it? You like it, huh? I think it.